Hello friends, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Elise, and this is my mystical bookshelf. And today I have a sort of heavier book to talk about. There is some major domestic violence themes in this book, so if you are sensitive to that, I would not recommend reading this because it was hard. I listened to it on Libby, and it was really rough. I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. It's called The Names by Florence Knapp. It's her debut book. I read a lot of authors who had just started writing, and I'm like, girls, you're doing great. This is a great book. But it's heavy, so I'm, forewarning, heavy. And I have my handy dandy notebook here, so if I'm looking down, that might be why. So, The Names by Florence Knapp is a very intricate, detailed, heavy, heartwarming, heart-wrenching book about Cora. Her name is Cora. She is the mother in this book, and she is going to pick a name for her baby boy, for her son. And Cora is married to this man named Gordon. And Gordon is a very mean man. He's a mean person. He is a surgeon. Or not a surgeon. He's a general practice doctor. So he's very respected in the community. Everybody thinks he's an angel. But behind closed doors, he is a demon. He's a monster. He's a horrible person. And so he gives this ultimatum to Cora in the beginning and is like, when you pick the name for our son, I want him to have my name. He wants him to be named Gordon because his name is Gordon. His father's name is Gordon. His father's name is Gordon. So it's kind of like, what is in a name, essentially? What does it mean to name someone? And what kind of implications does that name hold for that person? And what kind of person do they become based on what their name is? It's really deep. I was astonished. I was not expecting this. Like, I read the back of it at McKay's one day, and I was like, this sounds like a good book. But it was like $20. So I was like, I don't think I'm going to buy it. But, I want to read it, obviously. But when I read the back of it, it was just like, it goes through 3 timelines, and Cora has to pick the name for her baby boy, and she has a daughter already. Her name's Maya. And it kind of was like, what happens based on what name is given to her son? What happens to Cora? What happens to her family? And there was a lot of stuff that happened. It was a long book. I think it was like 16 hours long when I listened to it. And I listened to it over the course of a couple days at work because it was kind of like I got busy and I couldn't listen to it. And then I was like, I need to finish it. So I finished it at home. But yeah, so the timeline for this book, it goes through the years 1987, 1994, 2001, 2008, 2015, and then it ends in the year 2022. So it kind of goes in 7-year increments, which I thought was interesting. And the 3 timelines are based on what Cora has decided to name their son. So the first timeline is she names her son Bear. And Bear is the name that Maya suggested. So Maya, in the beginning, in 1987, she's a 9-year-old girl. And she's very quiet. She's super sweet. I really like Maya. She's adorable. And she's kind of like, she's not the punching bag for Gordon. Gordon's abuse mainly just affects Cora. But since Maya is so young and impressionable, she kind of sees what her mom is going through and doesn't understand it, obviously, because she's so young. And she kind of gets scared when Cora's like, I want you to give me a name. What would you name your baby brother? And Maya says, well, I would name him Bear because he's cute and cuddly, and that kind of gives the, like, an impression of a strong but cuddly person. That's kind of what Maya says. And then she's like, but I think Daddy, she calls him Daddy, I think. Won't Daddy be upset if you don't name him that name? And Cora just tells her not to worry about it and that it'll be okay. And it's not anything for her to concern herself with. So that timeline starts off with, she names her son Bear, she goes home, and Gordon basically beats the crap out of her. And it's not super in-depth detail, but it's in detail enough to where it made me uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable to listen to this man, like, actively hurting his wife. I didn't like it. And it made me kind of tear up a little bit. Like, I don't get super affected by heavy books, but this book, it really did affect me quite a bit. It was making me mad, it was making me upset, but I wanted to push through it. I wasn't expecting it to be this heavy. So the Bear timeline, we start off in 1987. All the timelines start off in 1987. So after we hear that his name is Bear, it kind of transitions and is like, okay, this is another timeline where she names her son Julian. And this is the name that Cora wants for her son, because the name Bear is from Maya. The name Julian is what she wants. This is what Cora wants. And the name Gordon is what her husband wants. So it's kind of like these three choices. Like, how do these choices from these different people, how do they affect the family? And the Julian timeline, this one is so sad. It's so hard because it's really, Cora is like, and this is explained in the author's note, Cora is the core of the story, basically, according to Florence. And so she's like the thing that affects everyone. Her livelihood is what affects the family, not Gordon necessarily. So Julian, his timeline starts off with Maya is asking her mom, well, what would you want to name him if you didn't name him Gordon? And so then Maya is like, well, what does my name mean too? And Cora explains to her that Maya means mother. So, and Maya's like ecstatic about this. She loves her mom. She wants to be like her mom, basically. So she's like, oh, cool, so my name means mom. Why don't we give him a name that means dad? And so Cora comes up with the name Julian because apparently Julian means sky father. So she wants Julian to rise above Gordon, to not be like him. So that's basically the theme of Julian's timeline, is to not have him be like his father. She doesn't want him to be abusive like Gordon. She doesn't want him to have this heavy burden on him that this name entails, because I think Gordon's father is also abusive, and Gordon himself is abusive. She doesn't want her son to be abusive. So that's kind of the implications of the name Gordon. So she names her son Julian, and in this timeline, it's so hard to talk about to me, because this was really sad. So when she names her son Julian, Gordon is super upset. He's more upset than about Bear, personally, which I thought was weird. I mean, Bear is an interesting name regardless, but like, he's super mad. He's really mad. And it's revealed that he offs Cora, and when Julian is 5 years old. So they don't have a mother in this timeline. They don't have a father either, because after Cora is offed by her husband goes to jail, rightfully so. So he's in jail, and then Julian and Maya get shipped off to Cora's mother, who lives in Ireland. So this timeline is about, they're raised by their grandma, whose name is Sylvia, and in Irish it's Sylveth, something like that. Sylveth, I think. And so we learn about their life without Korra. This timeline is without Korra. And it's really sad. Their lives are not very good without their mom. And their lives are not good with their dad. So Korra, what I've noticed, what I wrote down, is Korra affects them positively, and Gordon affects them negatively. So the timeline without Korra and without Gordon is really sad. So Julian he's quiet. He has this trauma. He didn't really remember his mom. And so he doesn't really talk a lot in this timeline. And he's like 5 years old when Korra passes away. So we jump to 1994. And so it's very sad. So Korra is deceased. And it feels very nuanced. Like, this timeline is so intricate in terms of how Korra affects Maya and Julian, because in the Bear timeline, Bear is a very nice boy. He's so loving and caring and kind, and he grows up to be this amazing person. And Julian also grows up to be an amazing person, but he's kind of lost without Korra, and so is Maya. Like, Korra is sort of the center for both of her children. And without her, they kind of don't know who they are. And it's revealed that Maya is a lesbian, and she's sort of in the closet in this timeline. And she's afraid that she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't get married right away in this timeline. She's sort of like a spinster, I guess. Sort of. I don't know. It's kind of weird. And the absence of Korra in this timeline is very palpable. It's very interesting. So Julian is like very quiet, reserved, and he kind of grows up slowly. And he ends up marrying someone in this timeline who is not... So there's another core character in this story. Her name's Lily. And Lily is the person that should be with Julian or Bear or Gordon. But in the Julian timeline, she never meets Julian, obviously, because he lives in Ireland. So she is not existent in this timeline. And Julian ends up marrying someone named Oralee or something like that. And this timeline, he's afraid of becoming his dad because he knows his dad is a murderer, obviously. And that affects him very greatly in this timeline. And he's really scared. The Julian timeline, both him and Maya struggle with really heavy anxiety based on what they went through as young children. Because Maya was like 14 when Korra passed away, and Julian was like 5 or 7 or something like that. It just really affects them greatly. So this timeline was kind of hard for me to read. And the timeline where the son ends up being named Gordon is really interesting too, because he really does turn out like his dad, and it's kind of scary how much the name affects him. Because Gordon, his father, he like manipulates his son into getting his mom in trouble. He manipulates his own child to getting Korra in trouble. And Korra, in the Gordon timeline, Korra's alive, but she ends up staying with her husband. So in the Bear timeline, Korra leaves, and she takes the children and goes away somewhere else and lives with someone else. And she never remarries, and she ends up happy, very happy in the Bear timeline. And it's very interesting. But in the Gordon timeline, where her son's name is Gordon, she stays with her husband and is in this relationship for like 40 or 50 years in this marriage. And it's really sad watching Korra like deteriorate in the Gordon timeline, because Florence really shows Korra as being so small in the Gordon timeline. Like, she's so minuscule in the story at this point. And none of her children really pay her any attention. Maya ends up becoming a doctor, in the Gordon timeline, following her father's footsteps, and she's still in the closet in this timeline because I don't think Gordon, her father, I don't think he would be very open to his daughter being lesbian. That's just my opinion. He doesn't seem very, like, accepting of that lifestyle, obviously. And in this timeline, Cora basically is told that she has dementia. And I'm like, what? Where are we going with this? She's like gaslit into believing that there's something wrong with her from her husband, from her son, from her daughter. And she tries to leave her husband a lot in this timeline. I think she leaves him about 6 times or something like that. And it's so sad that Cora is like forced to stay with Gordon. And I really hate it. I hated so much. And her son becomes just like his dad, and it's very upsetting. And he meets Lily in this timeline because they don't end up moving anywhere. And Lily is around the same age as him. They're friends, sort of. And he like harasses her at a party because he thinks he's obligated to, like, I don't know, obligated to her body, I guess. And it's just kind of creepy. And so he like ruins his chances with Lily. This timeline, he doesn't get married at all. He doesn't marry anybody. He becomes an alcoholic. And he becomes like, if anyone has watched the movie Wolf of Wall Street, that's basically what Gordon becomes. He becomes that main character. Whoever, I think Leonardo DiCaprio, I think he played the main character. I can't remember what that guy's name was. Was it Jordan? I feel like it might have been Jordan. But if you know that movie, so Gordon basically becomes like Wolf of Wall Street. He becomes an alcoholic. He's a really sad person in this timeline. He doesn't have any contact with his sister. His sister and him are not close at all in this timeline. In the Julian timeline, they're sort of close. And in the Bear timeline, they're like best friends. The Bear timeline is basically the best case scenario in this book. And so we kind of go through with like, how did Gordon's name affect him? So it affected him very negatively, clearly. And so Maya's a doctor. Gordon is like a basket case after he becomes an alcoholic and has to pick himself back up. And he goes to the hospital at one point. And then he learns that Lily became a lawyer for people who have been harassed, like sexually, and he realizes that it's probably because of what he did to her when they were 14. So that's kind of gross. And yeah, he really just feels bad about himself in this timeline. And I'm like, sir, you should feel very bad in this timeline because you are a horrible person. So Maya is also with someone in this timeline, but she's in the closet, obviously. And yeah, it's just really interesting. I think the Bear timeline is my favorite, but the Bear timeline is also kind of weird because it's revealed in one of the timelines, I think the Gordon timeline, that her son is allergic to bees, and they go on a picnic in the Gordon timeline, and Maya recalls that her dad had like saved him because he had like an EpiPen with him or a first aid kit or something. And so in the Bear timeline, he doesn't realize he's allergic to bees. And I know people were kind of confused about this, but in the Bear timeline, he passes away when he's 37. So he passes away in I think in the 2022 timeline, because it kind of talks about COVID too, which I thought was interesting. So he passes away from a bee sting because he didn't realize he was allergic to bees. Because he wasn't around his dad, and they had never gone on a picnic together or spent any time together because his dad's in prison in this timeline. So he ends up passing away in the 2022 timeline. And I know that made people upset. And it made me upset too. But it's just like, it makes sense because it felt like a little bit of foreshadowing when he mentioned that he was allergic to bees in the Gordon timeline, and then he ended up passing away from it. So, I don't know, I guess my thought on that is get your kids tested early for allergies so that it doesn't happen, so that you can be prepared when something like that does happen. But the bear timeline is really the best because Cora is happy, essentially, and Maya is also happy, and she's not in the closet, I don't think. She's more open about who she is as a person, and Bear is very open about who he is as a person. He ends up marrying Lily, having a daughter. This timeline is literally the best, and it was very sweet to read. And it was upsetting that he passed away, but I can understand why Florence made that choice, because it just makes you think that some things are inevitable in life, no matter what choices you make, but your choices do have consequences. And I think that's basically the main takeaway from this book, is that your choices have consequences. And there's also an epilogue in this book that I know people were confused about on Goodreads. From my understanding, this is how I read the epilogue. I read it as, it seemed like it was the point of view from Gordon Sr., and it was him having a heart attack. It was him actively passing away, and it seemed jumbled, but that was probably why. And it was him reflecting on his life as a person. It was him reflecting on how he treated Cora and how he treated his wife. And he was understanding that he is not a good person. He is actively passing away, having the thought that I'm a bad person. What I did was wrong. I should have never married Cora. I should have just left her alone. Because the way that Cora and Gordon had met, it seemed really weird and predatory because Cora was injured, and I think that Florence did that on purpose to show that this relationship was always going to be abusive and predatory no matter how they met. And like her having a broken leg, it was like a gazelle being wounded and having a lion like pounce on her and be like, I'm going to take your life. I'm going to take you. You're mine. You belong to me. It was really creepy. So he reflects on that when he's passing away. And he reflects on, I should have just left her alone. I should never have talked to her. And it's just really interesting how that epilogue was like tying everything together. I loved the epilogue personally. And then it goes even further in the epilogue to show, I think, the true timeline of what happened to their son. So Cora, in the end, the very end, because I think all these timelines were theoretical. So in the end, we learn that Cora actually ends up naming her son Hugh, based on her father. Because we never meet Cora's dad. We only meet her mom. And so we don't know anything about Cora's dad. But from what we do learn in like the very last couple sentences of the book is that he was a good man, and he should have someone carry on his legacy. He should have someone carry his name. So Cora ends up naming her son Hugh. And I think that is the true timeline. And that's what Gordon's thinking about when he's passing away, is that his son deserves a name of a good man. He doesn't deserve his name because he's not a good man. And his dad wasn't a good man. And I think every Gordon in the family was a bad person. So it's just really interesting how that kind of wrapped up. And I hope that I was able to explain it, because it was a little bit confusing when I first listened to it. But after like much reflection and like thinking about it and like really ruminating on it, it makes sense that the epilogue would be dealing with Gordon Sr. and him reflecting on his actions and why it seemed jumbled. Because I'm thinking when you're passing away, it's like your life's flashing before your eyes and you don't really know what to think. And it just feels very far away and jumbled, and I think that's probably why. But the only thing I wish there was another book dealing with the timeline, the true timeline of the son being called Hugh and how that affects him. So maybe Florence will write a second book about Hugh and how that name affects him, but I don't know if she will. But I can only assume that we're expected to think that with his name being Hugh, he does end up being a good person. That's what I thought in the end, is that we're supposed to think, okay, so everything is going to be okay with him because he's ended up with the name Hugh from his grandpa, and that we can understand that he's not going to follow that same path. This book is so thought-provoking. I don't know if I did it justice with my review, but it was really good. And I think if you like domestic drama, and if you're okay with like heavy books, that I think this would be perfect for you to read. And I gave it 5 stars. I can't sit here and not give it 5 stars. And I understand the gripe with the Bear timeline, especially. I get it, I'm in the same camp, but I respect what Florence did. I respect this book. I respect her writing, and I really can't wait to see what she writes next. But I think I've talked long enough about this book. I want to know your thoughts on it. I really want to know your thoughts on it. I need to talk to somebody else about this, so leave me a comment telling me what you thought about this book, how you felt about it if you read it, and if you want to read it. And yeah, so thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I'm sorry if the sunlight is kind of weird lighting for this video, because it's kind of like, I don't have any lights on right now, so if it kind of looks weird, it's just really bright out right now. But, so thank you, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, friends!